This episode of The Mandalorian raised a couple concerns for me, but if you haven't watched it yet, then here is your spoiler warning, because I'm going to talk about a few key things from this episode that, well, had me a little bit concerned, but also had me a little bit curious. So I'll get my first concern out of the way, and that is I am concerned that Disney is leaning too much into the cameo game. In this one episode, we got 3 cameos from outside of Star Wars that were ultimately distracting to me. Jack Black, Lizzo, and Christopher Lloyd all made appearances as characters on a planet that, ironically, Din made a point to say he had never heard of, and the ironic part is that all of the named characters on this planet were played by people that everyone has heard of. The danger with big-name celebrity cameos is that the audience is typically ripped out of the story, if not for the whole scene, at least long enough to miss who the character is because we're distracted by saying, oh, that's so-and-so. Star Wars has historically chosen relatively unknown talent for this very reason. Now, I know that's not always the case, but if you look at the big 3 characters in each film trilogy, you'll realize that each of them were relatively unknown before Star Wars. Probably Harrison Ford's an exception to that. But that allowed them to really become their characters in the eyes of the audience and eliminate some of that distraction that I felt when I saw Jack Black on the screen. Big name cameos are not a big deal when used sparingly at the end of the day, but 3 in one 40-minute episode was really distracting to me and actually just had me worried that it would be a normal trend that could become a substitute for good storytelling. Because why tell a good story when you could just throw in a bunch of recognized faces and hype the audience that way? That's my concern there. But let me know in the comments below, what did you think of the cameos in Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian? So my second concern has more to do with the actual story, and that is, what are they going to do with Din Djarin? Unlike the first concern, this one doesn't have me frustrated or annoyed so much as I'm cautiously curious. Is that even a phrase? Din Djarin has been the main character of the show, and I would argue that he's the title character of the show. However, it seems he's being sidelined while Bo-Katan takes center stage. And hey, I actually don't mind that right now. For starters, Bo-Katan is a really cool character who has been developing over the course of several shows, but it does leave me asking, what about Din? And no, I'm not super worried about Grogu's story because he's gonna live a very long time. He's got time to flesh out his story, but I am worried about Din. If he's not going to lead Mandalore, what's next for him? And by the way, I've never really been one to advocate for Din leading Mandalore, but I do want to have some sort of an idea where he's headed. Will he help Bo lead, or will he fade out of the show? No, I don't think he's going to fade out of the show. I'm truly waiting to see what they do with Din Djarin. I don't believe he's being replaced or pushed out of the story. I just don't know where his character is headed. Maybe you do. If you have an idea of where Din Djarin's story is headed, let me know in the comments below. And I know I've focused a lot on the negatives here in this video, so let me talk about one possible outcome for Din Djarin's story. The Armorer sent Bo-Katan to recruit the rest of the Mandalorians spread throughout the galaxy, and I was actually pleased to see that Din and Grogu got out of the house, so to speak, and joined Bo-Katan on this quest. Din and Bo's dynamic is continuing to grow, and I don't necessarily mean that in a romantic way like everyone else is pushing for, but I do think they work well together, and I think that is giving us a bit of a hint at where Din's story might go, and that is that they'll rule together. There were moments in this episode where Din's expertise or his knowledge saved a situation, like conversing with the Ugnaughts and getting the information they needed without completely offending them like Bo did. But there were also moments where Bo's expertise and what she brought to the table was needed. You could see that when the droids were malfunctioning and Din was dealing with them, he was getting all heated because of his past with droids, and Bo-Katan is the voice of reason that steps in and maybe tries to rein him in. So the two complement each other which is why I think they need to co-lead. Two co-leaders would also be a completely new dynamic for Mandalorians, as they've typically had an ambitious warrior leader who rose to power through their accomplishments. So I think it would actually be really interesting if we had Bo-Katan leading, but also Din Djarin leading with her. And I think that Bo will realize she needs him if she's going to successfully rule this time, because if you're not familiar with the rest of Bo-Katan's story, she's had a few opportunities to lead Mandalore and none of them have really worked out. So perhaps the key this time is to not do it by herself. I know, that sounds cheesy, but perhaps she is better together with another Mandalorian leading with her. And hey, I'm only quoting her at the end of the episode when she said Mandalorians are better together. So that makes me wonder, now that she has the Darksaber, which, if we're going on technicalities, probably somebody like Darth Sidious actually owns the Darksaber according to Din's rules that he just set for the Darksaber. But anyways, that's beside the point. If Bo-Katan has the Darksaber, that really probably negates a lot of the need for her to tame the Mythosaur. So what if, in an effort to perhaps establish her co-leader Din Djarin, she tells him about the Mythosaur and he tames the Mythosaur, giving him claim to leadership as well. So with the Darksaber and the Mythosaur, each wielded by separate individuals, they can unite together and lead Mandalore in a new way with two leaders. Now, typically in real life, two leaders isn't always the best solution. You typically need one strong leader in order to clearly lead an organization or a group of people. But I think that if we've got two Mandalorians that complement each other like this and are wielding the Darksaber and the other riding the Mythosaur, then perhaps it could be the fresh change of pace that the Mandalorians need after such a long history of warring with each other. Anyways, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think that Bo-Katan will lead by herself? Will Din Djarin help her lead? Or is there going to be something completely different that is not even on my radar? And lastly, what did you think of this week's episode of The Mandalorian? Rate it out of 10 in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video. May the Force be with you.